Hello and welcome to another part in our Kotlin basic tutorials. In this part, continuing with the previous parts, we will now enter into it and start explaining a bit what are variables, how they are used, what are values, and how they are used. Okay, we just used the variable here, but I didn't really explain what, why, what it means, and so on. So let's start by saying, for example, that in all programs, we need some place to store information. In case of assembly, the amount of variables we had in our assembly tutorial were only 8. There were only 8 places we could store information, and that information was always a number between 0 and 255. But if we close ourselves to that kind of possibilities, we are limiting ourselves to a very short amount of options, because with 8 different variables of 8 bits each one, to create a complex app, it could take decades. Okay, so what the programmers, the computer scientists and engineers decided was to create languages that will allow us to make a more complexer, much more complex things without and which will always in the end be translated towards assembly. So if in the case of all or most languages, we have always the ability or the option to create an infinite amount of variables. We also have to remember that if we create more variables, then the assembly part, when it translated to assembly, it needs to work much more, because it has to move information between the registers, the CPU, and the memory in a much higher pace. So we have to always remember that even though we can create as much variables as we want and as much of any kind that we want, we still need to be careful not to overload the memory of our device. Okay, so let's start by defining the most basic 3 different variables types that we have in all programming languages. The first one, variable number, will be of type int, or integer, int. Okay, the ints, yes, and we will make it equal to, for example, 5. Okay, the int is the type that represents all the non-decimal numbers. Okay, non-decimal numbers are numbers that have no point afterwards. They are non-decimal numbers. They are complete numbers. Okay, these numbers cannot be partialized. This means that if we divide, and we will see what happens, 5 divided by 2, the result will be always the value that is not in which it can be divided. Okay, it will be 2 because it's not decimal. Another type of variable will be the decimal number, num decimal, and in this case there is many kinds of decimal numbers. There is the double, 5.0, and there is also the float, f. We have always to put an f. The difference between float and double is mainly on how it's being treated by the CPU. Okay, float is built more for mathematical representations, while double has a smaller decimal part, but a bigger but a bigger number part. Okay, great. We have more types of variables. I forgot here to put the float. Sorry. More type of variables. Var string name. So this one, string, yes, is the variable that will be able to contain text. Okay, it will be surrounded by double commas, like the comma there, upper comma, and we can insert here any size of text we want. In this case, my name, so let's put Jonathan. Okay, and it will store it here. Great. Yeah. Well, these are the four. There is another one, which is the char. Say char character, which contains a character. Okay, but we do not use the char, but we don't use it much anymore today. To put one character, like for example character H, we have to do it like this. So now in each one of these variables here, we store a different value. The values are on this side. Variables are represented, are considered elements that can change, that can later on change. Okay, so here, for example, if I, instead of writing, I can print here down here, print ln, your name is, and I can sum my string name that is defined up here, this one here. So the variable defined here, I'm using it here. Just like this one, I'm using it here. And I can also start writing more stuff like your height is, and let's put that the decimal is my height. Okay, so decimal number will be my height. Okay, if I execute this right now, because I'm using these two here, it will write, we will see all this information on screen. Let's execute it. So it's asking me to enter a number, a text. Hello from UCGC. So it says, so you just wrote hello from UCGC, and then your name is Jonathan Bar-Magen. Your height is 184. As you can see, the values that will appear there are depend on what we are right up here. Okay, and we can do that through any other variables. We can create as much variables as we want. We create many kind of strings, many kind of floats, depending on the need we have in our application. Okay, the last type of variables variables I'm going to speak about is not really variables. They're called values. Okay, vals, not vars, but vals are can be used exactly the same as here. The only difference is that instead of writing var, we write val. Okay, and what we do here is put and we define it as a static data. Okay. What is static data? For example, string university. Okay, string university. So it will show the UCGC. Okay, so what's the point of these vals? The vals are final, what we call final variables. Final variables are variables that cannot be changed. Once you define the data here, they cannot change, and it can be applied to any of the types. It can be applied to floats, it can be applied to double. Yeah, once you do this, you cannot change the value of it, which means I cannot come here and do this equals to something, because it will tell me that this is a value, and it cannot be changed. We can change it to var up here, so we can do it. What does that mean? It means that I can change, for example, my height after I print it and print it again. If I do this, when I write 1.90, for example, and then I print this line again under it, like here, this time this value will change. So it will show 184, and then the next time it will show 190. We can try it. Okay, you can see as how it's changed, because I changed it in the code here. I gave it a new value. But I cannot do the same with this one here, or even better, even if I don't use this. Let's say I wanna force my name to be not to be able to be changed in the code. So now string name cannot change. It will only have this value here the moment it's declared. We call this declaration when you declare it. And afterwards, if I try to do this to change it, and call it, I don't know, no name, it will tell me, and it tells me that it's not val cannot be reassigned, cannot be changed, the value cannot change. So if I want to be able, it offers me options like change to var. So now doing that will changes this back to var. If I leave it as val, it cannot change. And you ask yourself, so what's the point of having values that cannot change? There are some points, mainly because sometimes when you create a code, you don't want other people to change values that are crucial for the function of your app. So doing that allows you to define properties in your app that are not modified by anyone else. And you have to remember that programming is not a lonely thing. We do it with many other collaborators, with many other people, and many times you don't want them to touch your properties. So you define them as values, and that way you ensure that they will not change that value in the future. Okay, and that's it. That's the explanation about basic data types, the ones that are int, float, string, char, and there are many others. Okay. But we will work first in the first tutorials with this, and how the difference between a variable and a value. Okay, so this is a value and this is a variable. And great, that's it. We'll see you in the next part of the tutorial.